We had a co-anchor this morning argue that the G20, the model of the G20, has peaked in its purpose because there's not so much agreement these days about alliances, global trade. Do you think that's true?
Actually, I don't think that's true. The G20 is a relatively new phenomenon. We've only been in place for about 6 or 7 years. It's an outgrowth of the G8, and people thought that that was outdated. So in the last 7 or 8 years, you've had a lot of agreement on the part of the G20, except that with the Trump administration, we're seeing a fair amount of disagreement now. So you have agreement in the G20 on things like trade. You have agreement on things like climate change, and you have agreement certainly in most of the countries on immigration. And so you do have a movement forward. What you don't have is you have a U.S. administration that's decided, for a number of reasons, to actually move away from that consensus that existed until last year.
So do you have a sense of how far back they'll move beyond Paris, let's say, in terms of on issues?
I get a sense that the G20 wants to downplay some of the differences. I think they are hoping that the U.S. administration will come around in some of these. So you're seeing, for example, on things like climate change, whereas you could have a vote today, then it'd be 19-1. The U.S. would be on the no side. I think they'd like to downplay that, and I think they'd like to focus on things that they can talk about, where they can see that there's progress. There are plenty of problems. There are things, for example, on trade, and you're seeing that the G20, even though they may not have consensus on a number of these things, you're seeing separate agreements, such as Japan reaching an agreement in trade agreement in principle with the EU, Canada with the EU. So I think they'll decide to probably downplay some of the differences and try and move ahead and show progress without the U.S., if that's the case.
Let's focus on that trade issue, Scott. I know that you also zero in on the economic policy challenges here for G20. Who's in the economic leadership position in this meeting?
Well, it's an open question. Of course, the Germans are hosting, so Angela Merkel is playing the leadership role nominally, and even I think in the spirit of what has been the long-standing G20 orientation on issues like trade. She's taken up that cudgel, but I think there's a real question in the absence of the U.S. providing the leadership it has always provided on these issues and really provided the momentum for the issues. It's not clear that the Germans alone, or the Germans even with the Chinese or some other leading actors, can provide the same kind of momentum. Particularly, it's not as if the U.S. isn't showing up. The U.S. is very much there. The challenge is that it's there in the new role of being an obstructionist. So it's not at all clear how they do make progress when you have a President Trump that is showing up and posturing on these issues in a way that is playing to perhaps a domestic constituency, but is not at all constructive to sitting around the table with the other leaders and trying to make progress on trade, on climate. So I think it really is a recipe for a G20 right now that will be effectively neutered.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.